Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Kim Frolander is the founder and president of Ruth Israel Initiative based in Birmingham, Alabama, a nonprofit committed to reconciling the ancient rift between Christians and Jews through education and trips for Christians to introduce them to the people and land of Israel. She spent 2 very formative years living and working as a volunteer in Jerusalem. Upon moving back to the United States, Kim wrote instructional books and developed a small group curriculum for Christians to get a better understanding of the relationship God desires to build between the Christian church and the Jewish people. Now she's added time organizing groups to visit the Holy Land through unique and specialized trips for micro groups as small as 6 and up to small teams of 25. She's a part of the Vineyard movement and serves as the administrator and communications coordinator for Vineyards USA's Well-Being of Pastors initiative. She loves to see pastors' hearts come alive with fresh vision and passion when they connect to the grand unfolding story of God's writing in the earth with Israel and the church together as one. She's a prolific author, having published 5 fiction and 5 non-fiction books. You can find more information about her at ruthisrael.org. Here to host this edition of Embracing Israel, seen the second Friday of every month at the 10 o'clock Central Time hour, and to talk about her newest book, A Spiritual Journey Through Israel, is Kim Frolander. Kim, great to see you here.
Great to see you too.
Well, it's kind of bittersweet to see you here because we were supposed to be Skyping with you from Israel, but as everyone knows, Israel has closed its borders.
Yes.
And we had to, of course, cancel our trip for March 25th as well.
Yes.
So a lot of things are happening in Israel. There are over 100,000 cases. The prediction is it will be epidemic proportion. And I just sent out an article that was released today that said that the cost of the loss of tourism is devastating.
Yes.
So we're facing a Israel, God's people, God's land, coming under an attack like we've never seen before.
Yes.
So when you notified your people, I know what my people's response was. How did they take it?
Well, kind of mixed, as you might expect. They had no fear of actually going. Mm-hmm. Their fear was that they would get stuck and not be able to return home. One of the couples has a 6-year-old little girl, and they can't be gone for that long from her. And the other had a granddaughter who she was hospitalized the day before I was supposed to leave. And even if they went and came home and were fine, they would still need to do a quarantine before they could go back and see her because she's hospitalized. And so they were kind of thinking, maybe we should just hold on before Israel closed the borders. And so I went ahead on that Saturday when I was supposed to be Shabbating on the phone with the airlines and the hotels and all that, canceling our trip. Now, we didn't completely cancel. We're going to pick up and go again in October, and I'm hoping everything will be completely back to normal and the economies will be booming again. We wanted to go ahead and get our reservations before everybody reschedules, so we went ahead and did that. But we did have to shut things down for now. Mm-hmm. And so they were disappointed in that. And I've talked through with them a few ways to actually handle the disappointment of a trip that you've been looking forward to. And I know that, all over the world, we've got teams of people who were expecting to be in Israel this week and next week and the week after that. And everybody has that, and it's kind of depressing. And then there's nothing exciting going on wherever you are because of all the quarantines and things you've been looking forward to canceling. And so there are some practical things that you can do to set your hope on the Lord, to continually take that time. I know our particular group, we were planning to just really dig in with the Lord, there's no reason you can't do that here.
Right.
You know, take that 2 weeks or less and really press in with the Lord anyway. Do it in your home environment when usually it's the most difficult because you've got so many things pulling at you here and there. But take that time and just say no to the other things that would try to pull you away. Social media, catching up on TV. Oh, I've got all this free time. Well, everything that you put into you is what you're going to get out. And if you're putting in garbage, you're going to get garbage out. But if you're soaking in the word of the Lord, in worship music, and just sitting and being with the God of creation, that's what you're going to be getting out of your heart, because whatever you sow, you reap. And so that's what I'm encouraging my teams to do, is to take that time that they would have been traveling and stopping at the different places and just spend it with the Lord anyway. Now, some people are going to have to go back to work so that they can get the other time off later. I understand that. Totally get it. But you may be able to do it anyway. Like, work in that extra time. If it's 20 minutes, if it's 2 hours per day, take the time and dig in with the Lord. And it's not about reading something else or doing something else. It's about being in the presence of the Lord. And so that, I mean, I won't know how that goes for everybody until,
right.
We get a couple weeks down the road. But that's what I'm suggesting that everybody do.
One of the things that I thought about in relationship to your new book, A Spiritual Journey Through Israel, is that I had assigned all of the 52 that were going with us to take a look at the itinerary and put the scriptures next to each location, and then go look up this place so that you have some notion and idea of where it is in relationship to the Old Testament, to the New Testament. Was this a place historically Jewish? What part did it play in it? But also to take the book and go ahead and do your spiritual journey through Israel, not there.
Yeah.
Take the pages where you have journal, write a line through it, and put before and during. And see what their different approach is to examining, as I'm studying it and seeing it, this is what it looks like. Now I can then journal what it feels like actually being there.
That's really good.
And so, I thought about this, that the intention was this is something you take with you, you do a little advance work, and then while you're there, it's your guide for each one of the venues to think about after you've been there. But there's a way to prepare. And I think that it's an incredible tool. As you know, this was going to be our gift to all the people traveling with us, still will be our gift to all of those traveling with us. But I want to encourage our audience to go online to, I think it's Amazon now. Amazon has it.
You guys have it on your website as well.
We have it on our website, ignitingnation.com. Just go to today's broadcast lineup on the homepage and click on Kim Frolander's name. It'll say, love the interview, buy the book, and just click on it and get it. And it's one of the most comprehensive outlines of many of the biblical sites that you go to Israel to experience, including some sites you may not get to but have a connection point between other sites. And so you can only see and do so much while you're there. One of the things that people questioned was, why was Israel so quick to close down the borders? Why were they so quick? What was so unique about Israel that they responded this way?
I've not heard anybody speak to it professionally, like people who actually know what they're talking about.
Right.
I have some ideas.
Well, Israel, you live in very close quarters.
Yes.
All the communities may be called settlements or high-rise. Everyone is out together. There's open markets. There are It's not really where you can segregate yourself like we have in our private homes. They do have subdivisions, but those are the much more expensive homes. So
Right.
many of the people live in high-rise apartment complex. You're very close quarters, and there is a significant elderly Holocaust surviving population that are at a very high risk. So the concern is this was going to sweep through this very small, very close quarter country, and it's caused some problems because there are Italian ships loaded with canned goods, which are not allowed into port because Italy is one of the epicenters for this outbreak.
Right.
So there's also great need right now. We're doing, on behalf of our guide, Ido, that I've had a relationship with a very long time, people don't understand the financial impact. A report came out today that there are, the tourism industry already has incurred billions of dollars in losses.
I believe it.
Under the state unemployment laws, you get 70% of your salary if you're an employee, but most of the guides are
not.
independent contractors.
Right. I would think drivers as well.
Many of the drivers are independent contractors. They drive for several bus companies, so they get no benefit whatsoever. Their entire income is lost, and yet their bills still have to be paid.
Right.
So we set up a Facebook fundraiser for Ido and his family. He has contributed so much into my life as a brother and a friend, and considers me to be his rabbi, and so we're coming alongside of him. But we also have our Israel General Fund that we're also having an appeal out for to make sure that we're getting funds to the humanitarian aid organizations that deliver food.
Okay.
One of the things most people don't realize about Israel is that the humanitarian aid organizations get about 1/3 of their food from the hotels, because at the end of the day, you go to the back of the hotel, you're not going to throw all this prepared food away. They come in with trucks, they come in with trays, they load it up, and then they distribute meals to families. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of meals being delivered daily.
I've seen those buffets, so
Right,
yes,
right.
for sure. There's
So-
so much left over. But now there's
That
not.
supply, that supply is
Yeah.
being cut off.
Wow, that's huge.
So there's a very desperate humanitarian aid need there in a country. And, you know, some are very quick to criticize and say that how can a tourist come into the country and then be quarantined in someone's home for 14 days? Well, I know a lot of people, and I probably have people I could call and say, can I come and stay in your home? But what about the 52 others
Right.
that are with me? Can I
Right.
find 52 individual homes that are willing to take a total stranger,
Yeah.
put them in their home, feed them, quarantine them in their home, and then your trip's over.
Exactly.
You have a return flight home. You haven't seen
Exactly.
anything but the inside of an apartment. So it's been a very difficult situation. I don't think that we in the States appreciate yet the real impact. We have a lot of venues that are closing, a lot of events that are being canceled, but Israel is virtually shut down from and isolated from the rest of the world in trying to protect its citizenry. And it's a complex and difficult situation. As people are looking at, and especially those that have joined the BDS movement, that have boycotted and stood against Israel,
Right.
a very unbiblical stance. There are things that have already impacted those denominations, and they're seeing their membership dwindle, and they're seeing the consequence of Genesis 12:3. On February 28th was the day of the perfect storm. 4 things happened that day that we talked about in our prophecy teaching yesterday that most people never connected. And that is, first of all, there was the peace plan.
Right.
And the peace plan had penciled in borders. The United Nations stepped in and said, no, we want specific hard-line drawn borders, and there is going to be a two-state solution. So that was hit number one.
Ooh.
On that same day, the Dow had accumulatively dropped 4,000 points. On that same day, the coronavirus was named as a pandemic,
Okay.
and Israel made the decision on that day. So if we look at Genesis 12 and 3, I'll bless those that bless thee, I'll curse those that curse thee. We take a look at the prophet Joel. God says, never again will my land be divided. These are consequences.
They are.
And people don't really understand the degree of the consequence to the world for standing against Israel.
Right. Because it looks like it's men making the decisions,
Right.
but it's not.
It's not men.
No, I mean, it's God's hand is the one that is moving and guiding those decisions, and like it just you can't become offended at what, well, I mean, you can, but it's really not good for your heart. Become offended at what you see happening, because God saw it from the beginning. Like He knew, okay, and it's not, to me, I don't think of it as, well, God is making this happen. But He knows us so well that He knows when He allows certain circumstances what our response is going to be, because He loves us so much. And whether we love Him or not, He loves us and knows us. And so He is completely in control. None of this caught Him by surprise. I mean, He really wants everyone to come into His plan. But whether they do or not, this is the plan that's going to be enacted. I mean, we've read the end of the book. We just don't know exactly how He's going to get there. But there will be a particular end. And we are headed that direction.
What most people fail to understand about this is there's a word in Scripture that 99% don't understand. The word is pestilence.
Okay.
So Psalm 91, people pray that all the time. Three times the word pestilence is named. The fourth horseman of the apocalypse, his name is pestilence. As you read through the Scripture, there's 20 or 30 other references to pestilence. And if you were to ask the average person, what do you think pestilence means? They'd say, I don't know, rodent infection or flies or locust or... Pestilence doesn't mean any of that. Pestilence is defined as an epidemic virus. So if you look up just in the dictionary, definition of pestilence, you're going to find the definition of pestilence is a fatal epidemic disease, especially bubonic plague.
Wow.
So when you ask the question, what is pestilence in the Bible, it means a deadly and overwhelming disease that affects an entire community. The Black Plague, a disease that killed over 30% of Europe's population, was certainly a pestilence. The pestilence is also one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse in the book of Revelation. So when we've been praying the Psalm 91 about pestilence, and most people, for lack of understanding of Hebrew, lack of understanding of definitions, see the word, they apply it to Cook's Pest Control. They apply it to, that's what pestilence to them is.
Right, that's what it's become.
But that's not the biblical definition, nor is it the Webster's definition of pestilence. So what we're seeing is that this plague, which is come out of China, which in the Bible is the country of Sin, S-I-N, that this pestilence is spreading throughout the world. If Israel is the epicenter, Jerusalem is the epicenter, then we constantly have to look at whatever impacts Jerusalem impacts the world. This two-state solution proposal, and every time America meddles into Israel's own
Yep.
sovereignty,
That's right.
or the UN,
Mm-hmm.
enters into what God has defined as Israel's sovereignty, there's a consequence
There is.
to mankind. Now, someone say, well, Rabbi, you're stretching this, and is the coronavirus really related to this? You can believe it or not. But if you look at 100 years of natural disasters that cost over $1 billion in damages, you can link them and tie them, as Bill
Every
Koenig
single
did in his
time.
book Eye to Eye, to natural disasters tied to decisions about Israel.
Every single time.
So it's quite stunning that this is going on now, and now we're starting to feel it. We have venues being shut down.
Right.
So much is going on. As we look at God conveying a spiritual message through Israel to the rest of the world, the people you would take, the people you're going to have classes with, the people you continue to minister to in small groups, teachings that you have, how will you talk about this virus in relationship to its impact on Israel and the rest of the world in biblical terms?
That is a very good question that I have not fully put together yet. I know that it couldn't come without a foundation. And so in the small groups that I teach, we cover a foundation. I mean, down even to the different ways of thinking between like Greek thinking
Right.
and Hebraic thinking. And so we go all the way down to the way of thinking is different, and then go back to the Bible and build up so that there's a biblical understanding. And then you bring the biblical events into it, and then you can bring modern events into it, because it's so much easier, with 1,000-yard or 1,000-year view. And you can see in Scripture, okay, well, they did this, and then this happened, and then these guys did this, and this happened. And it's so much easier to trace when somebody's tracing it for you, but it's hard to see it if you don't have somebody laying it out for you. This is what happened then, and we're experiencing those consequences now because of this event and how they responded to it. And so I think once the foundation is laid, then people have a better way of connecting the modern things that happen back to the Scripture, because God's not mocked. When He puts something in place, it's in place for a reason. And it's that He has revealed that it's there. It's not like He has gone through and said, these are the rules, you have to get in line with my rules. And it's that these are the rules. God set up His kingdom this way. The Bible and the law that is there is a revelation of that. It is guess what, guys? Here's the rule book. If you want to live well in the creation that I created, just follow these simple things and draw near to me. I want to know you. That's why I made you. And so it's not coming at things of, this is the way to do it. It's, come on, this is the way to do it. And when people can really grasp that, there's a different way of doing life, because you're not feeling condemned if you sin. It's, oh, I want to draw near to the Father. I want to do things right. And so, I don't even remember what the question was.
Well, we're watching America's response to the coronavirus,
Yes.
and America's response to the coronavirus is that we're closing down venues.
Yes.
We're closing down gathering. Churches are sending out notices, even saying that if we have an Easter service, there will be no communion. We will not be handing out bulletins. We will not be handing out song lists. We will not be shaking hands. We will not be having personal contact.
Right. No hugs.
Yeah, the opposing response is Israel. Tens of thousands will gather at the Western Wall and pray for the nations about this virus. Not being concerned that tens of thousands gathered at the hotel will put people in very close proximity closer proximity than what's recommended,
Right.
okay, to cut this transmission down. But because of the spiritual foundation of Israel,
Yes.
small things, you've had this conversation 1,000 times. You see somebody, you say, let's meet for breakfast. They say, okay, I'll see you at 10 o'clock. And they always add 2 words after that we never use in America. And the 2 words are, Lord willing.
Yes.
Lord willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Lord willing, we can make these plans. But it's not our plans, it's His plans.
Exactly.
And Lord willing, we will be there. That's the spiritual underpinning of the nation of Israel.
Yes.
Is that the response is God did not give us a spirit of fear.
Exactly.
We are to be anxious for nothing and to take all of our needs to the Lord.
Yes.
And so there are pictures now being broadcast about this gathering that's going to take place at the wall. And you know that the average age in Jerusalem is older.
Yes.
This is the most vulnerable group, but yet they will be right on the front lines, not being concerned for themselves, but they'll be interceding on behalf of Israel and the world.
Yes.
All right, to stand in unity with one heart, one voice, one spirit, one God, to pray against this virus so that none
Yes.
shall perish.
Yeah.
Our response is stay at home, don't go to church, encourage churches to cancel. What's very interesting is the bulletins about events which are being canceled, that there are no guidelines for bars, for saloons, for restaurants. They're saying they want you to scale back to half. That's New York. New York City has said they want, if you normally have 100, we want you to have 50. Okay.
Okay.
But here in Alabama and other states, they're addressing schools, they're addressing churches, daycare centers. They're cutting off visitation to nursing homes.
Yes.
And those kind of things, but nothing to do with bars. So you can still gather together
As long as there's alcohol.
in close quarters and still have that fellowship, but yet they're advising churches to cancel services. So it's a very odd,
That's an odd combination.
but it is the American way because we remove God from so much.
Yes.
We're talking with Kim Frolander, author of A Spiritual Journey Through Israel, who hosts this edition of Embracing Israel, seen the second Friday of every month at the 10 o'clock hour right here in our studios in Birmingham. The coronavirus is now spreading. There are a number of global leaders. The president of Brazil has just been diagnosed positive for it. Prime Minister Trudeau's wife has been diagnosed as positive. Alabama has just announced its first case, so there's now 47 states where the coronavirus has now been tested positive, and this is not going away soon, and it will run its course as God desires. Is this a clarion call for us to get on our knees and pray? Is this a clarion call for us to lift up Israel, who is probably, across the world per capita, the most financially devastated nation in the world, with a population of just 8 million, of having people live in such close proximity to each other that Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister, is expecting 60%, 4.8 million cases of coronavirus in a tiny country that's only 850 square miles large. They don't have the services, they don't have the hospital beds, they don't have the equipment, but they are feverishly working on vaccines, and I can assure you that many of you who have stood against Israel, who carry a cell phone, don't realize the chip in that cell phone was invented in Israel and manufactured in Israel. If you have an Intel chip in your computer or your phone, it was developed in Israel. If you are looking at Google, much of that technology was invented in Israel. And it continues to develop new vaccines, new methodologies, and will not relent. We're a people that have been persecuted for 5,000 years. So coming against an unseen enemy, the hatred, the vitriol, the anti-Semitism, the desire for nations to annihilate the Jews has been around since God called Abraham. And if you recall that even Abraham entered into battles with two kings, and so the fight began to cut off the line of the seed of Messiah. And if you understand that that lineage is through the Jewish lineage, that Jesus was born, it will be through the Jewish cry for his return, then Israel needs to be important to you. You need to understand Israel, its biblical importance, and for you who are believers, you have a biblical command, a covenant. And the covenants of the Bible, one does not negate the next, one builds on each other. And so as we look to Israel, knowing that the next one to sit on the throne will be the Messiah, that the crown, the corona, will never depart from Israel. Interesting, it's called the coronavirus, the crown. Corona means crown. That as we look for the return of Messiah, we look at what the setup will be. Will there be something that brings the world to decide on which side of the equation, faith or fear, will they be on? Is this a test run for the world to face what is now being considered a one world governmental position of quarantine, of closing borders, of a mandate that almost every country is implementing? Is this a test run for us to see where we're going to stand? Are we going to be people of faith and stand on God's promises, or are we going to cower in fear and not lift up the name of Jesus and not stand for Israel? What will you do? You right now in the Middle East who are watching this, you who are in a Muslim country, who have never really considered what God's real plan is. Maybe you have a question as to what God's plan is. God's plan is for none to perish. It's his desire that none shall perish. That means you. And the only path to eternal life is through the Messiah, Jesus. Will take place as he returns to Israel. The word commands us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. He that watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. Will you be a person of prayer and lift up the nation of Israel? Or will you be a person of fear who's hoarding toilet paper and water, thinking that this is going to be an apocalyptic time? We will continue to broadcast. We will continue to bring the word. We will continue to intercede on behalf of Israel. And we have immediately rescheduled our trip so that we're not afraid of the future. We're believing in God's promises for the land of Israel. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to rejoin Kim Frolander as we embrace Israel and talk about a spiritual journey through Israel and what you can do in this time, both in studying this book and in following our teachings through the Biblical Truth Library. If you visit ignitingnation.com/store, if you're going to be spending time at home quarantined, instead of catching up on Housewives of Beverly Hills, maybe it's time to get some good sound biblical teaching under your belt. Those courses are available a la carte to you right there from your computer. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Kim Frolander, who hosts Embracing Israel this Friday, second Friday of every month at the 10 o'clock hour. Kim, welcome back to the show.
Good to be here.
Israel needs our help.
Yes.
There are so many ministries to choose from that provide humanitarian aid. But not all ministries provide spiritual aid.
That's true.
As a matter of fact, some of the largest of the organizations that people are aware of that are organizations that raise money for Israel, that call themselves some type of fellowship of Christians and Jews, or some type of unity between Christians and Jews, actually bring money into Israel for the purpose of helping with Aliyah and humanitarian aid, but stop short of the gospel.
Yes.
And people need to be discerning about that, especially believers. That supporting humanitarian aid is incredibly important, and the aid agencies right now are in desperate need of funds and funding.
Yes.
But I still maintain that there are excellent ministries involved in humanitarian aid that also preach the gospel, and that we as believers have a decision to make. Is a humanitarian aid organization that does not preach the gospel because they want to maintain favor with the government, does that put them in the category as an enemy of the gospel? Are they also not managing those funds who may be supporting anti-missionary type of work in Israel?
Right.
And the Jewish believing community is growing tremendously, but under a great deal of persecution.
Exactly.
When it comes to giving out humanitarian aid, the Messianic congregations, the Messianic communities are not recipients of that aid. It is deprived, it's denied from them. So they need us to come alongside of them.
For sure.
And we don't give a list. What we do is we encourage you to go research ministries that support Israel and see what their mission statement is and take a look at what their vision is and whether or not they
Yes.
support the gospel. There's many fine organizations. How do you guide and coach people into deciding who to support?
Well, I ask them also to do their own research. Like I'll give them maybe some search terms or something. You know, this is what you're looking for, and these are maybe the catchphrases that you want to avoid, so that they can have an informed decision-making process. Because we want you to give where you feel the Lord is leading you, but maybe put some. Don't just hit the first one and say, "Oh yes, this is it," you know, because you did your research by Googling and you came up with one.
Right.
So you don't want to do that. You want to get in. You want to figure out who they are. Who are the people that are leading those groups that are giving out aid, and what really are the values that you have that line up with what those amutas or whatever are doing, and who they are as people. And so you want who you are in line with who they are. And then give it all, you know, be as generous as you possibly can.
Well, certainly birthright trips and people making Aliyah, that's now all suspended during this period of time.
Right.
So the money you would give to an organization to help people make Aliyah, to make the transition to move to Israel, those funds need to go into humanitarian aid in order to support Holocaust survivors, in order to support those people who are so greatly impacted. And listen, I want to make this very clear. I have not said in any way, shape, or form, nor has Kim, that you are to support only Jewish work. There are many Arab Muslims who are citizens of Israel who are deeply impacted. Many who work in the hotel industry, many of the bus drivers, many who work in the various parts of hospitality. They're being laid off without any benefits. They're being sent home and trying to figure this out on their own. They need our help too. So we need to be judicious about supporting Israel and all of its citizenry. And a lot of you struggle with the politics of Israel as opposed to the biblical mandate for Israel. And you struggle with politics at home. You struggle with politics in third world nations. You struggle with politics and decisions being made and genocide happening in parts of Africa. There are no perfect governments. There are no perfect countries. But if you are going to deny humanitarian aid to a country that is going through the most difficult time in their history, even when Israel was formed and they had no money at all. They had citizens who were working and tilling the soil. They had to raise up an army because they immediately came under attack. And this is tantamount to that time when financial resources are drained. People's savings are not going to go very far, and the cost of living in Israel is higher than the cost of living here. Now, the government's making concessions and delaying certain things, but they need our help in a very big way. We are, of course, have Rabbi Zev Porat, Messiah of Israel Ministries, who is a part of this ministry and a part of this program, and he is out preaching the gospel on the streets and providing humanitarian aid throughout Israel, and is one we know and trust as well as many others. But he does not distinguish between Arabs and Muslims and Jews, or Christians for that matter. People are people, and that is the heart of Israel. In your encounters in Israel, You encounter many, and I think people have a preconceived notion about that Jews hate Arabs and Arabs hate Jews. Help dispel some of that.
Well, first, it's just not true. I mean, we do have that picture. I think that the media has really done a number on getting us to believe it, but it's just not true. Especially when you get down to the individual person. I've never seen any kind of hatred, one person to another, no matter what type of belief system that they have in Israel. The Jewish people will bless the Arab people. The Arab people are kind to the Jewish people. It's so untrue that it's crazy that we believe it. And that's one of the things that taking a trip over there just sets your mind straight. I mean, not only all the biblical and the spiritual stuff, but you just get a frontline, truthful vision of what it really is like on the ground, like the person-to-person interactions. I have a friend who has her kids in a school that all of the different children, they're all in there together. Like they're learning in each other's languages. And, you know, once you know the language, that's halfway there, you know? And so that is probably the best thing to learn on a trip, is to just sit and observe. You know, okay, yes, that person's Arab, probably Muslim, but they're not acting the way that we see, or that we think we see on the nightly news, or, you know, wherever people are getting their news, probably internet. And Jews the same way. You know, every culture, they do have extremists, but when you take the individual as an average, you've got an interaction between people that really is normal. It's normal. And I can't even stress that enough. Once you see it, then you understand.
Media has focused so much on Gaza.
Yes.
And Islamic Jihad.
Yes.
That seems to be the only focal point. That's the only American view, is that there's this persecuted people who are indigenous to Israel, who are being displaced and denied their rightful home. And those that make that statement know nothing about the history of Israel, because when you talk about indigenous people, we are the indigenous people of Israel.
Absolutely.
The Temple Mount being a Muslim shrine, the deed when David bought Mount Moriah from Ornan the Jebusite, which was what he was being used as a threshing floor, is recorded in the Bible. So, you know, these transactions that predate Islam by a thousand, hundred or thousand years,
Right.
Are the facts. But people don't want to deal with the facts. We're underdog, or we're a country that loves the underdog. Just take a look at the way our focus is that 3% of the country is commanding legislation and commanding us to pay attention to the LGBTQ plus agenda, which represents a sum total of 3%, and that's the driving force. So we are very underdog type of a society, but not knowing the facts, not having the information, not being willing to become informed is problematic.
Yeah, that's where I run into the problem. People have their ideas, and they don't want you to mess with their ideas with truth. That's just wrong.
And media has played a part in a lot of this misconception. Everybody getting along doesn't sell.
Of course not.
But when you go to a country, and I've ministered in many European, Eastern and Western European countries, look at the children.
Yes.
If you want to know whether or not there's enmity between people groups, look at the children. When you see a Jewish child in the middle, an Ethiopian Jew who is as dark as any black you've ever seen in your life, and on the right hand, a little Arab child, and they're all walking down the street together, holding hands, swinging hands, skipping, singing the same songs, going to the playground, joining others of different colors, different backgrounds, different belief systems. None of that matters.
That's right.
Look at the children, because the children are a reflection of the parents. And so if the parents aren't teaching their children, and look, we know discrimination in the South. It is generational.
Right.
You're a racist because your father was a racist, because your grandfather was a racist, because your great-grandfather was a racist. If there was no racism in your family just because you're in the South doesn't make you a racist. But there are many people in the South who grew up in that environment who carry that forward into their everyday lives. Even today, as well informed and educated as we are, we carry over from our childhood the lessons we learn.
Right.
And the role models that we have. When you go to Israel and you see the role models and you see that there is not this hatred, there's not this enmity. Therefore, if they are equally as impacted as the Jewish population, should they not also receive humanitarian aid?
Absolutely.
And so I would challenge any of you who have been to Israel before, who have had a guide, whether Arab, whether quote-unquote Palestinian, whether Jewish, non-believing, or Jewish believing, that you inquire as to their welfare, as to what this is happening to them. It's what I've done with Edo Canaan, our guide, my dear brother, in finding out and investigating how is this going to impact you personally and your family. And it didn't look good. And so we rose to action and put together a fund. You build these relationships. You have your groups. Your groups can come. People you've traveled with before can come together and send a gift. You can do it online. It's very easy with PayPal or any of the other services to set something up to get it to them. And at this point in time when there's needs at home, the model that Jesus gave us was to not think about our needs, but think about other needs, other people's needs. And Israel needs us now. And this is an important time in Israel's history. Kim Frolander, author of A Spiritual Journey Through Israel, available through ignitingnation.com. Click on today's broadcast schedule. You see her name. Click on it and get the book. Find it on Amazon and visit Ruth Israel, Ruth Initiative. RuthIsrael.org. RuthIsrael.org. And join one of Kim's micro trips. We take larger groups, we take full bus loads. Kim has this very intimate trip in Israel where you get to experience it at a very different level. Kim, always good to see you. Thank you for being a part of this, and we will see you right back here next month.
Sounds good.
God bless you. We're going to take a
You
short
too.
break. When we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.